Well, today's mission is to find the earthen ramparts that were built in 1234 by the Goryeo dynasty after they moved their capital here to Ganghwa Island. And the range behind me, you can see there's a low range of hills. That was where the ramparts were. They were on the outer part of the city. There's an inner wall which has been reconstructed, which is a lot smaller, which protected the main buildings in the palace. But this one, it's the earthen ramparts, probably extended for about 10 kilometres around the hills surrounding the city itself, and probably enclosed the many households that were evacuated here to the island at that time. So I'm going to go check them out, and we'll see if we can find any more interesting things about this. There once was a stream running right through the town, and was from ancient days. It was one of the reasons that they chose this site. This is where it is, where it comes out now. It's been completely covered over, probably in the 1970s, and runs actually under the main street of Ganghwa. A lot of people probably don't know that. It comes out here and was the supply of fresh water for the capital when it moved here during the 13th century. Here is just some of the many rice paddies that are on Ganghwa. They've been here for centuries. It's very suited to rice growing. There's a lot of flats in between these ridges and mountains, and this was an important source of food for the Goryeo capital once it was here. And there were many people that were evacuated here, probably in the hundreds of thousands. Current population is not even 70,000. Quite crowded, and food would have been not only grown here but imported from other parts of the peninsula. You can see that the rice paddies have been ploughed and turned over, and are starting to be flooded in anticipation for the growing season or planting season coming up in May. And here we have where the little seedlings are. They're ready for planting in early May. Ganghwa doesn't only just grow rice, it's quite famous for its sweet potatoes called Gaegyeong. And here you can see where a rice paddy has actually been converted into a dry field. I've seen a lot of this happening around Ganghwa in the last couple of years, where the rice paddies are just being filled in, and Gaegyeong farming has taken over. I'm not sure whether this means that it's more profitable, probably so, than rice farming. But yeah, you can see it's side by side here. They have the dry farming and wet farming. Fairly quiet, peaceful in the forest here, making my way up to the ridge. I noticed that there are trees that are probably no thicker than about 30 centimeters or so, and that's a result of reforestation that took place in about the 1960s over the course of a couple of centuries up until mid 20th century. Korean forests were pretty much denuded, mountains were deforested, and erosion was an incredible problem. So the reforestation programs put the forests back to the mountains, brought the ecology back to life, and people went from using wood for cooking and heating to coal and gas and oil. If you can say there's one common religion that Koreans have, it would be ancestor worship. And you see here, you come across these quite often in the forests and the hills. These are some ancestor graves here, and they're well tended, so the family still comes here, tends to the ancestors' graves. They have a great big festival for this each year. It's called Chuseok. And although these graves are well tended, there are many in the forest here that are completely overgrown and neglected. The family line perhaps died out, or the people have just been forgotten. Here you can make out one of those neglected graves. You can just make it out. There's a bit of a hump in the ground there, which is the actual grave itself, and it's obviously been there for many centuries, and there's no one around to tend to the ancestors anymore. It's coming up to the ridge line now. We can see what remains of the ramparts here as the path cuts its way through. Because they're rather eroded, rounded off, there's a trail that leads along the tops, and I'll follow that for a while to see what I can see. Might not be terribly clear here, but the trail is on the top of the rampart, which drops off fairly steeply to the south there. You can see a deep trench line along here, which is where the remains of where they dug the earth out to build up in front of it. Well, considering these earthen ramparts were built or finished in 1234, early 13th century, they're in reasonably good condition. The evacuation took place in 1232 from Gaesong, which is now Gaesong, was Gaegyeong back then. It was the capital of Goryeo. Moved to here, so there were a lot of people working on this to build it up into these ramparts. And it's at least 10 kilometers. I have to confirm the length of that, but it could be longer. It surrounded what you would probably call the outer suburbs of the city. So considering that these are 800 years old, thereabouts, they're in pretty good condition. I think they'd still keep an enemy at bay, or a few angry dogs. Well, this appears to be the high point of the ramparts on this ridge, and it commands a magnificent view to the south and over to the east through the trees, and also you can just make out through the trees to the north there, you can see the South Mountain. It's a really good section here. Nice example of how it drops off to the south there, and got the raised section here and a more level area from where they dug out the earth to ramp it up along here. Coming in a fairly straight line along here and heading to an area which is on today's maps called Daemun-dong. Daemun meaning Great Gate, so I can only assume that there was a city entrance gate on the south of the wall, and that the other gates were probably the ones in the city. I've yet to research that. It's come down into a cutting. It's an S-shaped path that's cut through the embankment here. I'm not sure if this is 13th century or much later, just to allow access through from north to south, south to north. We'll see. Gone off the main trail. There's a straight section. You can see it's fairly worn down. It's very low. I guess in its day it was a lot higher. I don't know what it would have been topped with. Maybe a palisade, maybe just foot patrols. I've come across a fairly large public cemetery that's still in use. A lot of evidence of people coming here, tending the graves, drinking and eating, having fun with the ancestors. But you can see the cemetery is built right up to the ramparts here, and there are some graves on the other side as well. Well, the ramparts end quite abruptly here. Quite a steep drop now to the road down below. This would have been the place they called Daemun. It's a great big cutting, as you can see, through the hills, and the rampart continues on the other side, but I won't be going there. I'll be going back the way I came and then down to an old temple site, Goryeo era temple site. Yeah, okay, so that's it for the earth ramparts, and I'll make my way back again. The capital on Ganghwa was built surrounding the rice paddies in this area. Probably been here for many centuries. You can see the real build up of the walls of the paddy here, and it stretches off into the distance. Ganghwa has always been a source of food for for God's sake. See, the rice paddies here have been here for quite some time, probably centuries. Rice cultivation has been in Korea since, well, probably the Bronze Age, 1000 BC thereabouts. And on Ganghwa in particular, rice farming has been very successful on the many flats that are consisted of this region. Oh, Jesus Christ. So that part in the farming cycle now where they've ploughed over the paddies and they're starting to flood them in preparation for the planting in early May. And over here we can see they got the seedlings, rice seedlings under cover, ready for the planting, which is coming around. Oh, fuck me, Roan. Very quiet and pleasant in these woods. Notice that a lot of the trees are no thicker than, say, 30 centimetres. It's because in about halfway through the... oh, forget it.